All right. So, for the latest episode of my illustrious podcast, I am joined by Shanna and Helaina, co-founders of Seek, a brand spanking new travel app. And I could, go into what I've learned about it and what makes it unique and special, but that's what I brought them here to do. So, really to kick things off and get right into it, maybe we'll start with you, Shanna, if that's all right. And then Helaina, of course, feel free to chime in as well. But maybe we could get us started telling me all about Seek and kind of what brought you here.
Yeah.
Here meaning your roles as founders of Seek. Excuse me.
And also to this awesome podcast, obviously.
Sure.
Hey, Eric, thank you so much. So I think maybe we can start at the pain point that we're trying to solve. So when we think about reviews and recommendations, one thing that the current review websites like TripAdvisor and Yelp that don't do very well is that the recommendations are pretty generic. And sometimes you don't know, who the person is that's writing the reviews. You don't know if you actually could maybe trust that person. And so what we have found is that 95% of people ask their friends and family for recommendations, not just during travel, but also in their day-to-day lives. But that's scattered everywhere on emails, on texts, etc. So what we want to do is be able to bring the recommendations from friends, family, and people that you trust and like-minded people to one platform. So there's 3 features in our MVP. One is you are able to see the recommendations and reviews of friends, family, and like-minded people and influencers. 2 is you would be able to write your own reviews and recommendations and share that with your inner circle of people. You could share with all of your followers, or you could just share it with specific people if you don't feel like, for example, sharing a particular place that you've been to with everyone. And then the third part, which is really cool, we have a data scientist working on this, is based on all that information, we would also be able to surface you certain recommendations that is personalized to you. So, for example, maybe you are going to Italy and you are, for some reason, not a food person, but you really want to explore the EDM nightlife in Rome or something. And so we would be able to, based on your interests, surface you the relevant locations and interests, but also you can follow friends who might have EDM reviews in Italy who've been there, or local influencers or local EDM DJs who are able to give you the best reviews. So I guess I'll end with the mantra of what we have is sort of it's a social review app. It's way more personal and trustworthy than something like Yelp and TripAdvisor. And it is a lot more useful content than, for example, something that's like Instagram or Facebook.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Well, thank you for giving me the rundown there. It's interesting. That actually provokes quite a few thoughts. I was talking to someone else who had an idea for something kind of similar, specific to restaurant, like kind of like Yelp, but with the personal touch you're trying to add. So these 2 anecdotes alone indicate to me that there really is demand or a trend kind of coming along for people to get recommendations from their social circle. They want that deeper social proof that something as impersonal as Yelp simply doesn't give. And I can see tremendous value in that. I mean, if you're going to Italy, even if you're not like a foodie or a gourmand, it shouldn't be too hard to find great food, right? But EDM clubs and DJs certainly, that's a bit more, I guess, maybe not esoteric, but not as easy to find with Google searches. So I could definitely see the value in there. So I get, Helaina, maybe you want to add a bit more or kind of tell about your role.
Absolutely. So I'm currently the marketing and social media lead at Seek. And when I first got on board, the thing that really attracted me to the product and the concept was my own personal experience with travel. And over the past few years, I've been to San Francisco. I've lived in Boston. I'm currently in Toronto for a little bit. And I've been to a lot of cities around the country. And I've always had the same problem of there's so many options and I have no idea what to pick. And to the point where I get bored because I just get so paralyzed with the choices that I don't know what to do. And I usually end up going to like the worst possible place by accident because it gets reviewed to me on like a top 10 place blog or something. And so for me, the idea that Shanna pitched to me when we first met was so enticing as someone who would need that kind of app or that kind of product. So I was immediately attracted to the idea, and I knew my friend group would be. And knowing my friend group is in New York City, which is a place filled with stuff to do, and even they would probably like this app, it just shows that there is a need, because no matter how surrounded by things you are, it doesn't mean that you know the right stuff to do. And I think that this product is going to help people not only in my age range, but a little bit below and a little bit above to have really great personal experiences that they wouldn't otherwise find.
Yeah, I can really hear the conviction coming through in your voice there, and I agree with what you're saying. I'm in New York City, as I told you, before we started recording, and I can, at least pre-COVID, when I was going out more, I can tell you there's definitely a few times, like on the weekends, where it's like, well, we're just going to the same neighborhoods and bars and stuff like that, because even in New York City, what else do we don't know about what else there is to do. So. Yeah, I can really understand your perspective. So I'm kind of curious to hear more about your backgrounds, kind of, what were your prior experience and, kind of, as we said, brought you here being Seek and your current venture.
Yeah, of course. So I can start. So I've spent probably now slightly over 12 years in startups, specifically mostly in the fintech space. So I moved to New York right after graduation. I was at a fintech startup. I did strategy for a while, went to Wharton for business school, did consulting at McKinsey for 2 years. And one of my old bosses is now the CRO of a company called Stash. It's a fintech startup. We recently actually became a unicorn, which has been super exciting. It's been sort of 3 years of wild ride.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So I lead strategy there. And I've always just been very passionate about starting companies, solving problems that haven't really been solved before. While I was at Wharton and while I was at McKinsey, I worked on a couple lifestyle projects and startups. We actually did a dating startup for a little bit. We did a furniture.
I thought about doing that myself, actually. I'm not going to lie.
They're so much fun.
Yeah.
I worked on a furniture startup, sort of a export-import app, which was really interesting. We did an art investment startup for a while. So I've always just been passionate about building something from scratch and building with a great team. So I came up with this idea maybe a year ago, obviously before COVID. And what really triggered it was I was on a trip to Barcelona, and exactly Heleina's experience. The top bars on TripAdvisor were not the type that I was interested in. And it was very difficult to figure out where my friends have been without sort of going through all their spreadsheets and waiting for people to text me back. There's nowhere to sort of just ask locals what are the best places that I would enjoy. And talking to a lot of advisors and investors who are interested in this idea, they sort of talked about this next iteration of social and how the next iteration is going to be sort of these micro communities. And there's like a whole article about Clubhouse and its success and how in the future it's going to be about you connecting with like-minded people, and how review apps right now, people are just shying away from the very generic, and that whole industry is ready to be disrupted, ready to be social, and ready to sort of come into what millennials really like and Gen Z really like, which is the communicating, social, and getting people like you around the world to be sharing the same ideas and going to the same places. And so that's why we got the team together. We're working on this on the side, but it's been a super fun wild ride for the last 6 months.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, no, it's funny you talk about like micro communities, kind of the network effect there. Actually, as you said before, when you mentioned what brought you here to this podcast specifically, I do want to point out for anyone listening, if you've seen the video with Ulrich and James, that's what brought Shanna here. Ulrich was kind enough to introduce me to Shanna, and it's through that kind of personal recommendation that we've connected to record this. So I think that's this little experience right here is kind of the proof of the power of that personal social recommendation. So sorry, just a bit of a tangent I had to go off on right there. Helaina, if you'd like to tell me about your background and kind of, I know you're part of this because it really speaks to you, your personal experiences, but if you want to elaborate on your background, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in a relatively different field. My dream was always to make films. I love watching movies. I was always crying during movies. And I thought, because I was emotional about them, and I always thought that that was like my calling. I wanted to make like the next Rocky. I wanted to make the next Notebook. That was just like my vision. But once I started film school, I went to Northeastern University. My experiences were not what I thought they would be. I felt like there was a lot of steps that I had to take to get into a place where I could make stories happen and get my ideas out there. And I wanted another path to telling stories. And during the pandemic, I really found a passion for storytelling for brands. So my family owns a small business in Brooklyn called Yesterday's News. It's a small antique store. And during the pandemic, they were forced to close. So I actually rejuvenated their social media presence and got them about 8,000 followers during the pandemic. And we were able to pay rent and pay all our bills just off of Instagram sales. And it was kind of through that I recognized that I could use my film school experience and use my writing experience to build a brand and essentially do social media marketing, which has become my new kind of career path. And so when the opportunity came up with Shanna, it just seemed like a perfect fit for me because I was already pivoting for the past year towards this direction. And now this is something I actually cared about and a product I would personally use. And I knew it would be a great fit and it would be a great experience builder. And now I'm a part of an awesome team. It's kind of grown into something more than I expected at the beginning.
That's a really fascinating story, to be quite honest. I mean, I would say you've already had success as an entrepreneur, really keeping your parents' business, more than afloat, but successful through what are unusually difficult times. And I like the fact that it really kind of, I guess, underpins the notion that entrepreneurs can really come from anywhere. Right? I mean, there's no set path. There's a variety of winding paths that can bring you to success in business, especially if you're passionate about it. If you like, Shanna, as you said, solving problems, and Helaina, if you like, as you said, telling stories. So you guys have some really fascinating backgrounds. I appreciate you sharing that with me. Shanna, you mentioned you struck out and began to do this pre-COVID, and naturally the travel business has been upended, we'll put it mildly, by COVID. So I'm curious to hear from both you guys kind of exactly how you've pivoted, how you've dealt with it, what you've learned, just, all your experience pertaining to COVID and Seek.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So a couple parts, but right before that, just a quick shout out to Helaina. She actually is amazing, crushing our Instagram. It's been so much fun. So I think especially with this kind of app, marketing and getting the name out there is so key. So that's been awesome. So sort of related to that, so 3 separate different thoughts. One is our thesis is that travel will absolutely come back. Hopefully, by the end of this year, and it will be much stronger. We're all sort of a believer in the roaring 20s after COVID, and just literally talking to all my friends, coworkers, family. Everyone is ready to travel. Everyone is ready to get out there, and there's so much pent up demand that I think if we do it right and we launch it at the right time, by September, October of this year, it will absolutely come back, and it would be sort of a great time to go into the space. So that's one. Two is, in the meantime, we are looking to launch the app into the App Store in May of this year. And we currently have a designer and two engineers, in addition to Helaina and the data scientist, working hard at getting that into the App Store. And we are going to launch in New York City for that reason. And we have a whole marketing campaign around sort of being the tourist in your own city. And the thought is exactly like you were saying before, there is so much that people haven't explored yet in their home city. And, people, especially in New York, people are always looking for new places to go eat, new museums to go to, new pop-ups that are happening over the summer. And so this would actually be a great occasion for, while you may be stuck locally, to try out the new things in your city. And then the last thing I would say is, I do think this app will be the most powerful as the world sort of happens, and you're going to Bali, you're going to Mykonos, and you can actually get those influencers there or locals that are like you to share their recommendations. And we are already starting to do that. For example, we have an influencer based out of London who has a bunch of recommendations for Mykonos and for Cinque that they go to every summer. They have thousands of Americans DMing them on Instagram to sort of ask about their recommendations. And so we're already building that content onto our platform for when the world opens again.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're definitely right. About that pent up demand. You see it, for instance, in the success of the Airbnb IPO, and there it seems that reflects a general sentiment that travel is going to come roaring back. It's not just going to return to the status quo. And I think we can all, having been pent up in our living rooms and bedrooms this whole time, can feel that personally. So it's good to see that you're really, planning for that future, but also in the meantime, staying very agile, attacking the opportunities that currently exist. That is, tourists in your own city, which pandemic or not. I mean, people do need to step foot outside and do something every now and then. So you guys are still adding a tremendous amount of value there. Another thing I'm really gathering from this is Helaina is really good at social media. And I'm probably offline going to have to ask you for like some help or recommendations, because I could definitely, I could definitely stand to get better at self-promotion. But I think in the meantime, what I'd like to maybe dive a bit more into some of your social media marketing efforts, like kind of how you've been so successful, and maybe what other entrepreneurs could glean from your experience in their own social media efforts.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate the compliment, especially Shanna's shout out. Like, you guys are too kind. A lot of it has been learning, though, really with boots on the ground. Again, I studied film. So for me, my first real social media experience was when I was 11. I made a Justin Bieber fan account on Twitter, and I grew it to 20K followers. Justin Bieber followed it. His manager followed it. So at like 12 years old, I was kicking it with JB and his managers on Twitter. So I kind of had that early experience, that fangirl experience, but surprisingly, having that really early experience with metrics, gaining followers, interacting with the community really became the hallmark of what it means to be a social media manager today. So the skills kind of translated over the course of, even though I really hadn't run anything for 5 or 6 years, when I kind of picked social media back up again, those same skill sets were still ingrained. And now it just came down to learning more of the basics of Instagram. And if I were to give any tips, it really comes down to figure out what story you're telling, because ultimately people don't care as much about the product as they do how it makes them feel and what they can get out of it. And a large part of that is the story. So for Seek, for example, we are going to be an app, and there's a million apps out there. And if you look on TripAdvisor or Expedia's Instagram, it's hundreds of pictures of high quality travel pictures, and there's no story. So what differentiates them? But when you look at our feed, you see You see pictures of people on our team. You see memes. You see infographics about things related to our company. And what we're basically trying to do is create a community of information and connections that you can't find on any other travel platforms, social media. So by giving people content and giving people almost the journey of your growth and development, you're engaging them in a way that 500 pictures of Mykonos or Rome in high quality is not going to give them. And I think that's been a very big leap for me, because at the beginning I thought, you know, kind of follow the pack, follow what the big guys are doing. But I think if you are starting small, it's important to tell your story right from the get-go. And I think that's what we've done. And it's been a slow growth, but it's been completely organic. And we haven't had to buy followers, and we're getting a lot of engagement right off the bat. So I think accepting slow growth at the beginning is another huge virtue, just because a lot of people are tempted to get that 10K right off the bat. But I think if you build a base slowly from the beginning through really great content, that's when things take off, maybe in 6 months or a year.
Gotcha. Yeah.
One thing I would, sorry, Eric, just one thing I really want to add to that is, so to Helena's point, I know a lot of competitors and a lot of small apps, when they start, they purchase 20K users or something on Instagram, and you see a lot of those feeds, which might totally be fine for those apps, but we have made a very specific choice that literally our value prop is trustworthy and personal. And that is why we are different from the bigger review sites that may have fake reviews or may have reviews that are not helpful. So it is better to build a strong community, even if we start small, start in New York, we get the word out, but we get people that really are passionate about our product. Because when people are passionate, they talk about it on Reddit, they talk about it on Instagram. We have people that DM us all the time just asking about the product and when it's launching. Like, I think that is what is so unique about micro social networks and what differentiates us.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. I appreciate that. Definitely helps, elucidate a bit more. And there's something very important there, like the network effect and just the community you're building. It's more important, probably generally speaking. This isn't unique to Seek, but that you have a quality community, especially when authenticity is a part of your value proposition. I mean, even if you're, let's say, another business that the emphasis isn't there, you obviously want to be trustworthy, and a quality community of genuine contributors rather than 10,000 bought Instagram or TikTok followers definitely achieves that a lot better. So excellent point. Thank you for adding that, and thank you for telling me all about that, Helaina. I'm kind of curious, as entrepreneurs starting your own company, what do you really love about it the most? Like, what's your favorite thing? I mean, you definitely touched on this a bit, but if there are any other thoughts you want to add about what you really love about being entrepreneurs, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think for me, it's honestly just the ability to do different things, wear different hats, and not really knowing where you're going or how things are going to shake out in the next hour or next day or next week. Like as you mentioned, with the whole everything that's happening with travel and COVID, having to think about how to pivot and how to position ourselves the best. Thinking about, for example, how to offer designs, working with our designer on that, thinking about how do we start marketing our product, what are the best features that we should build with the engineers. I think every meeting is different. And what I really love about Seek is honestly, we have such, and I'm literally not just saying this, but we literally have such an amazing team that everyone clicks really well. Everyone works really well together. It's a small team. Everyone's pushing each other. We have a lot of fun. That is something, that type of atmosphere and that type of culture you don't really find easily. And so that I've been sort of very, very thankful for.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. I had a thought, but it kind of escaped me for a second. I'll come back to that in a second. But Helaina, if you want to add your perspective in the meantime, that'd be great.
I basically, I don't have much to say that Shanna hasn't already said, but something that I found really exciting is the uncertainty, because for the first 2 months, I was kind of going into it with this all-encompassing travel mindset. And then like 2 weeks ago, she was like, hold up, we're going to New York only to start. So I had to kind of like re-envision everything. And for a brief minute, it was scary, but then it was actually super exciting. And there's been a lot of moments where we take these turns that you wouldn't do, obviously, in like a larger business, because they've already established themselves and established their niche and their value proposition. But we kind of get the chance right now in these early stages to readjust that as needed and based off of things we're hearing from people in that moment. So you kind of feel like you're creating this like sculpture, and it's not done yet, and we're getting to the finish, but we're still like in the process of like filling in the details. And it's, you know, it's going to be exciting to see it when it's really finished and it's up in a museum and it's shiny. But right now it's still in like the molding process, and it's kind of fun to be a part of that and see where it goes.
Gotcha. Something you said there reminded me of what my earlier thought was. It seems that Shanna, you and Helaina, you as well, you guys kind of thrive off the unpredictability and the uncertainty, which is, normally can be very anxiety inducing, but it seems like you guys just take that and allow it to motivate you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and it's honestly fun, especially if you have the right group of people and people who are open-minded. I really believe that, like, as long as you have the right group of people and you're fun, anything can succeed. I'm sure there's going to be, lots of pivots and lots of things that don't work out, but if you work together, it's fun.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it definitely sounds like just something I'm picking up on speaking to so many entrepreneurs is that the sense of togetherness and, the support that comes from a good culture of like-minded people is an integral part of success in entrepreneurship. So great point. I guess so conversely, all right, since you're not, maybe like me with your heart leaping out of your chest when anxiety strikes, you guys have a pretty good grasp on that. What's the really like difficult part of your journey so far, and just, I guess, entrepreneurship in general?
Yeah, I think at a small startup or pre-seed, really it's, this is so cliche, but it is trying to figure out that product market fit, especially this social environment. So we've done a lot of customer research, Zoom calls with 30 plus people, a bunch of surveys, and there's been sort of three takeaways that we have seen. One is there is absolutely a need and an interest in this product. Everyone, 100% of people say like, oh, it would be great if we can see friends' reviews and like-minded people's reviews and have that be personal and we can trust it. So that's a good thing. However, the second thing that we've heard is that what is the most difficult about this is that social aspect. Like, how do you actually get people to put reviews on there? How do you actually get people to invite their friends? So we have a lot of ideas, like starting with influencers, gamification, and sort of making the input of reviews as simple as possible. Sort of those like habitual triggers, almost like how Instagram does it, that makes you feel like every time you see a pretty thing, you need to story it. It's like, how do we? So maybe at the end of the day, we notify you of places that you may have been to, or we connect to Instagram, and just makes it really easy for you to review something in 2 seconds, make that review relevant. That I think is absolutely key. And then the third part is really making our design as sleek and user-friendly as possible, because what we are selling is a dream. It's the dream of traveling and the dream of being with friends again, the dream of creating memories. And we want that dream to be sort of in the app, that when you open it, it's this is what I want to do, and this is what my 2021, 2022 would be like.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, actually that reminds me. Have you ever read The Lean Startup?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that reminded. I haven't gotten through it completely yet, but I do remember. He's talking about his company, and one concern they had was, how do we get people to bring their social circles, their friend groups onto this? I remember. So nothing to point out here. You clearly already know about all this. Thought that could be potentially a good recommendation. But nonetheless, anyone else that also has similar questions to what you're describing, that could be worth checking out. All right, cool. And Helaina, yeah, as always, would love to get your perspective. Same question.
Yeah, so Shanna said something that stuck out to me, and the idea of selling a dream, right? So on her end, that means something a little different than on my end, which is really literally selling people a dream, because trying to market something that doesn't exist yet has been definitely the toughest part of trying to figure out what Seek's story is right now. And so I think the way that I've kind of reconciled that is, as I mentioned earlier, treating our social media platforms as a story of our development as opposed to an end product of what we are, because we aren't an end product yet. And right now we're kind of like working through the journey ourselves, and we don't document every conversation and every struggle we have on social media, but we do have, these sort of tent poles showing where we've changed and pivoted. And you can see that throughout our social media, kind of our journey as a team and the different decisions we've been making. And we're trying to give people that story so that they understand our brand and our mission, but they also understand that we're not stable yet. So that's a terrible word to use. We're not a finished product yet, and trying to get people on board and excited about something that they can't actually see or download yet. And I think we've really done a great job so far with getting people on board with an idea that they can't see. And I think the real key to that has just been being super engaged and open with people and asking their opinion, asking their thoughts, and trying to give them, sort of that hope for the future of how exciting things are going to be once they can actually download the app and use it and kind of go wherever they want. So that's been a difficult challenge. And I'm sure a lot of companies are faced with that right now, especially companies that can't really have a product during COVID. So they have to market this dream. And so that's what we've been doing. And I think so far, so good.
Sure sounds like it. Yeah, no, it's interesting how you talk about telling a different story, I guess, from antiques to an abstraction, right? Antiques are very concrete. That's easy. It's on the one hand, there's like telling Harry Potter's story, and then Moby Dick, right? Completely. There's both the art of storytelling, but vastly different. I guess that's kind of what you're experiencing. But all right, but I mean, it sounds like a fun change. And a challenge for you to take on. So glad to hear that kind of come through. Let's see, what did I want to touch on next? You mentioned, culture and the people you work with being so important. I guess I'm curious about, you could go into like hiring practices or just more generally, how do you, build this culture and make sure it's full of the people that are a fit for your vision?
Yeah. So our story has actually been a pretty interesting story. As I mentioned, sort of this idea came about maybe a year ago. I started talking to one of my friends I've known for 10 years, Julie, who's a PM, also in the fintech space. And she really was brought into the idea. She thought it was super interesting. So we started talking about how do we actually make it come alive, and how do we actually sort of bring the product into market and see how it performs. So Julie is now also on our funding team. She's great, and she is our product manager. And so basically, honestly, just posted on ZipRecruiter for engineers. Initially, we posted for engineers and designers, and we've been so lucky. So we have Dan and Mohammed, who we just literally found through ZipRecruiter. We found Kate, the designer on ZipRecruiter. The other Dan, who's our social media lead, I knew from back in my McKinsey days. He's a data scientist at McKinsey. And then obviously Helaina, the one and only, saved on ZipRecruiter. And it was, we did talk to a couple of people. So Julie and I hope I think we are good at reading people, whether people are fun, hardworking, but the most important, just kind and passionate people. And so once we got this crew together, we meet once every week. We've met once every week for the last 6 months, even though everyone is sort of all around the US right now because of COVID. All of us are usually in New York, but now it's all on Zoom. And then we have a weekly design meeting with Kate, a weekly engineering meeting, a weekly social meeting with Helaina. And it has just created such a great bond between all of us. We now have probably like 60 to 100 hours that we've spent together now. um, and it's been great. And I think that's one of the most important things. We had like Christmas hangouts and things like that. It's just been fun while building the team.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds kind of like you really, it's less so about the methods like third-party recruiters, ZipRecruiter, but more about just really understanding what that person, well, I shouldn't say looks like, because we don't want to judge people on their looks, but basically the kind of personality traits that make someone a fit for the culture you have in mind. Like, again, back to storytelling. There's kind of a story around the culture you're trying to build, and so have a good idea of who those characters are. Hope I'm not going too far out there with the metaphors, but
no, that's exactly it. So I am a firm believer that you obviously have to meet a certain skill set level, like that's absolutely true. You have to be an expert in your field. However, I think a lot of that can be learned, but the sort of the personality and the tenacity that is needed to be part of a founding startup and being able to be okay with change, be able to be okay with the ups and downs, because there's going to be a lot of downs, and hopefully just as much ups. But that type of personality and being able to stick together as a team is the absolute key. I think I read somewhere, it was either Andreessen Horowitz or somebody who was saying that everyone can figure out their problem. Like eventually, as long as your team stays together and is tenacious and keeps on trying, like you'll figure it out. Like it may not be a $1 billion company, but like you will figure it out and it will be okay and you will be successful. But like most people fail when you sort of give up or you just have like inner fights and things like that. And that's what we're trying to solve against.
Yeah, everyone can figure out okay, I may need to include that on like my separate quote page. I've got a page on my website with some inspiring quotes. It can't all just be like Julius Caesar and Voltaire. So that's a pretty good one. But I did, something you said reminded me of an experience I had. A startup I used to work for, I think it was like a year or two, got acquired by Cognizant. So very successful exit. And all the guys in recruiting there were like, felt like you did, meet a certain obvious expertise level. You can't be incompetent at the role. But if that box is checked, that's satisfied, the rest has to do with, how much will we like this person? How much can we get along with them? And the rest of it, the problems or the competencies needed for the job can be taught, can be figured out. And so I think it's generally a pretty good hiring practice. And I don't think so. It seems like you kind of feel the same way. And a lot of people are coming around to the idea that we're, trying to pick up on the intangibles and just meet that kind of minimum for competence. I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but that's kind of
well said.
Thank you. Yeah, that's kind of what I picked up on there. So this is an interesting question. I always ask everybody because it always kind of comes up. It's a concern of people's or something that's associated with entrepreneurship is constantly working. 100-hour work weeks, sleeping under your desk like Elon Musk or something like that. So, which probably day in and day out is not healthy. A lot of advice I've been getting, at least like places like Y Combinator and from others, is you do have to strike a balance. There's got to be a life outside of the business. So I'm kind of curious, what do you guys do? How, to put it simply, do you balance work life as entrepreneurs?
Helaina, do you want to go ahead first?
I'll go first, sure. That's a great question, and I am definitely still in the process of figuring it out. This is definitely one of the more busy times of my life, I will say. I've kind of taken on a lot, but I knew I wanted to, and now it's just a matter of really working through how to make that work best. So right now I have a pretty rudimentary system. I have a notebook and I just literally make check boxes for my day. I make sure lunch and dinner are in there. And if I get a little workout in, hopefully that is great, and maybe a walk. But I'm straddling taking some master's courses with also trying to bring Seek to life, and still trying to help my family business on the side. So there's quite a few components going on. I'd say really writing it down in any way is great. You don't have to have a fancy planner or a technology service that you use. Like I literally just use like a marble notebook. um,
That's awesome.
yeah, and then I'd say also, this is gonna sound so overdone, beyond overdone, but drink your water. Like that is the key. The past 2 weeks, I started drinking way more water, and my productivity has been ridiculous. So yeah, get that water in. I downloaded like a water app, and I think being hydrated for some reason just makes everything feel a little bit easier. And yeah, those are my 2 tips that have worked for me in a concrete way that I can give.
Really important question before I pass it off to you, Shanna. Does coffee count?
No.
Enough of that. Okay,
I kind of
right.
have to offset my coffee intake with more water, because when I drink coffee, I feel like it absorbs all of the water out of me. So I have to drink 2 more cups to kind of make up for it. But I just say drink as much water as you can, and then just have coffee, because I'm also like, I need those 2 cups a day, 8 o'clock, 4 o'clock. That's it. Like,
I knew you were going to say, I was hoping you'd be like, yes, Eric, it counts. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I drink my fair share of coffee, but that's great advice for anybody. You're inspiring me to make sure I drink stay hydrated, because that's important. Athlete, business person, working a 9 to 5, whatever you do. That's just good, health advice. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because as obvious as it may seem, and it's, it really isn't.
exactly.
So it's important that you pointed that out. And I like also that you touch on using visual aids. Like it's it really does help to have things written down, especially by hand. Like I like that, writing it down by hand rather than just sticking everything on a calendar and swiping away notifications when they come, because I know that's what I'm going to do. So that's very helpful. Shanna, I'd like to hear your perspective on balancing work and life as well.
Yeah, sure. So I guess I will say, totally transparently, I am one of those people that I do enjoy doing a lot of things. I do sort of get bored just sitting there. And, but so it has actually been really rewarding and fun for me to have a sort of bringing Seek to life, especially during COVID. Have something that we're all very passionate about, having something that we can work on and believe in. The one big thing I will say is I'm really into every day I have to walk like basically 3.5 miles. That's my goal. And so like no matter what, for the last 10 years, every Monday through Friday, I walk 3 miles. And so sometimes I might take calls on those walks, or sometimes maybe thinking about something, but that absolutely is key. And to Helena's point about lunch and dinner, so in my youth, in my sort of early 20s, right after undergrad, I think I didn't really think about the lifestyle aspect. And it's not even that I was busy. Sometimes I'm just, I don't need to eat lunch. It's fine. Like I'll have a snack in the afternoon or something. And I just realized that it is really not sustainable. So you actually become a better worker, and you are more productive when you eat lunch, you eat dinner, you go for these walks, you talk to friends. And we're actually, Seek is really lucky that we have a couple great advisors who have a lot of expertise in the startup world. And so sometimes I talk to them and they're on walks when they're talking to me. So, or like they're out with their kids, and it is nice to know that people are making it work.
I'm so glad you said that, because I take walks all the time. I mean, I don't count my steps or my miles, and maybe I don't walk 3 miles or more every day, but I do it because I enjoy it. I have all this. I can't sit still, so it helps me to walk. So I'm really glad you validate that as a habit. Last question, guys. I really want to know, just what advice do you have for aspiring and current entrepreneurs?
it's going to sound super cliche, but I actually really do believe in this. I think that if you have a dream, you should go for it. I honestly do think, when I was in business school, when I was in consulting, I hear people pitch ideas all the time, and like maybe some of them are shitty, maybe 99% of them are shitty, but you're not going to know if they're shitty or not until you actually do it. And so I think the vast majority of people I talk to, I think 95% of people have ideas and 90% of them don't do anything with it. And so, like, I believe in Seek. Helaina believes in Seek, but even if Seek doesn't work out, that's fine. We tried it, and we went out there and we learned, and maybe the next one will be successful. But I actually do think, this one will be successful. It's just, you won't know that until you actually go do it. So just honestly, just go do it. It's now is probably the easiest ever in human history to start a company. Like, you can literally with $100 start a company. So why not do that?
Yeah.
And to that point, I'll let Helaina answer next. But the one last thing I would say is, like, when you have the idea, talk to people and ask people their honest thoughts about the idea. And that was going to be my last thing to you, was we would love your thoughts, your honest thoughts on this idea. Like, what you think, whether it's going to be something that you would use, how we can make it better. Like, that would be super helpful for us also.
Sure. I mean, I'm flattered that, you want my opinion. I mean, conceptually, I think it's a terrific idea. The premise of it is totally sensible. I mean, yes, people do trust their friends for, stuff like this. I care more about people who I know have similar tastes to me, for instance, for movies, than I do from Rotten Tomatoes. So, you know what I mean? If I'm more concerned, if someone's worked at a company, for instance, I trust their perspective more than Glassdoor or some anonymous whoever. So yeah, I think conceptually it's a brilliant idea. I haven't had the pleasure of using it, though. I think after this, I will certainly check it out. But I think if you guys really, execute on this and deliver all the value you intend to, it has a tremendous potential. Again, and like I said, even here in the city, I think earlier I was saying, I don't always know where to go out, say, when things return to normal. So something like being a tourist in my own city could be terrific. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, if you're open to it, I'd be happy to, again, maybe try it out when things launch, and stay abreast of it, and which I want to, because I'm very excited to see where you go with this, and give you my feedback as a customer.
We would love that. Thank you so much. That'd be lovely.
No problem. Absolutely. And Helaina, just before we go, I'd like to hear your perspective on or what advice you'd have for fellow entrepreneurs.
Besides Shanna's advice, which is really the key, I think, for me personally, I found, kind of going back to work-life balance, you can't really do anything until you care about yourself. And I've tried a lot of times in my life to start things and do things when I'm not paying attention to my own life and myself, and it doesn't ever work out. You really need to be in a good place, I think, or at least be in a place where you're trying to get better from, whether it be you've had a year-long bout of laziness, or if it's something more serious like depression. It's really hard to start from a place where you don't care about yourself. And I think once you care about yourself, it allows you to care about ideas. It allows you to care about the pursuit of success, and it allows you to care about others on your team. And I don't think I could have done this 2 years ago or a year ago, maybe. I think I've grown enough through COVID. I feel like I've been lucky enough to kind of find myself and grow through COVID. A lot of people have had a hard time through COVID, but for me, this was a great time to start, because I felt like I was really ready to give part of myself to something else. But if you don't have, a complete feeling of wellness, I feel like it can be really hard. So try to get right with yourself, and don't force yourself to be in a startup just because you feel like you have to. It's really important to get your own things together first.
And that's really great advice. Really helps, I think, anyone hearing it to destigmatize any concerns, just destigmatize mental illness or just the problems we go through that oftentimes people make us feel ashamed of. And you said take a year of laziness. I feel like I've had 33, but but I mean, it is great advice. I mean, to do your best, you need to be at your best. And so, and going back to, working 100 hours a week and sleeping under your desk like Elon Musk. I mean, you got to find that work-life balance. All the evidence really does show that past a certain point, working yourself to death only makes you less productive. There's diminishing returns. So keep that in mind when you're passing hour 50 or 60, feeling burnout, but there's still something to do. Maybe step away, take care of yourself, exercise, go for that walk. Anyway, I won't belabor this to death. Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time, the perspective. It's been a blast getting to know you. I'm really looking forward to all the great things you guys do. And, again, just thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. And I was going to ask Helaina to give a shout out to our Instagram for anyone that wants to follow.
I got you. Thank you, Eric. This has been super fun. First podcast ever. So, but yeah, so we're Seek Travel App on Instagram and we're Seek Travel App on TikTok, and just look up Seek Travel App on LinkedIn too. Hit all the three.
All right, I'll say it one more time in case anyone missed that. Seek Travel App on Instagram and TikTok. Don't forget. Awesome things coming. All right, well, thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.